Tonight on Meet Your Double Feature, an amnesiac android joins a band of rebels to take down the evil ruler of Jesustown. It's a fight for free will in Mechanical Violator Hakaider. Then, a heroic android leads a band of fighting scientists in a battle against ancient demons. It's a fight for survival in Super Inframan. It's a Mighty Morphing Double Feature, and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome to Meet Your Double Feature, a double-blind movie review podcast. My name is Thomas, joined as always by my brother Frank. Frank, how are you?
I'm good. I'm pretty well hydrated.
Hydrated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's good.
I'm excited.
He's
to be
excited.
here.
There it is. Okay. I was going to say, this is what, our 19th episode, and you're just going to drop the I'm excited bit?
I was just going to make it I'm hydrated. That's my new thing.
That's
just
your new
always
thing. Drink
coming in.
water, children. All right. Frank's excited. I'm excited. We are back with another episode. In case you have never listened to Meet Your Double Feature before, first of all, thanks for joining us. The way our show works is that every episode, Frank and I will exchange recommendations for films that neither of us had ever previously seen, and then talk about those two films on the show to figure out which of us gave the better blind movie recommendation. It's like gambling, but for nothing of value.
Wait. It's like gambling.
Well, it's like that's the double bet. It's like a blind bet where you wager something without knowing what it is. We don't know if the movie's good.
Yeah, right. I was like, how much money you got on this?
Anyway, we are back with the third episode in our ongoing season talking about forgotten superhero films. Essentially, any superhero movie that is not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe or released in the past, 6 months, I would say counts as forgotten because it's the only thing people talk about. So, Frank, first off this episode, I'm going to hand things over to you to talk about the movie I recommended, 1995's Mechanical Violator Hakaider. Possibly the weirdest movie title ever? Question mark?
I mean, it's cool. It's definitely a mouthful. It's difficult to say quickly, but it was an interesting movie. Where did you find this? What brought you to this?
It's a great question. I had done a lot of research before this season began, looking for examples of what we would call a forgotten superhero film, just to have a pool of choices to pick from. And oddly enough, totally outside of that effort, I came across a Reddit post talking about this movie, and I saw the title in the post and was watching this little clip that they were showing that looked like it was a scene from Aliens or something. It was just humans in army gear with sci-fi weapons, and it wasn't until 45 seconds in that Hakaider shows up, and I was like, oh, this is a Super Sentai movie? What on earth is this? So the tonal shift there was very curious to me, because as we have documented 24 times, you and I really liked Power Rangers growing up and watched it all the time. And so every now and again, I get to see one of these Japanese films that's kind of in that same genre. And I just love all of them. So I'm excited to see what this one does differently.
Yeah, totally. 100% agree on that. And I think we prefaced this in our previous episode. We're going to be pronouncing several things incorrectly, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. I'm pretty sure Hakaider is correct. But we'll see.
We will see.
People will let us know.
Yes, because that character is actually from a different series, which is really interesting. And I didn't know this until I looked up the film afterwards. I think you may have mentioned it before, that he's an anti-hero in a previous series. He was in the broader term here is a Tokusatsu series, which is essentially anything you might recognize as looking like Power Rangers. If it's people morphing into battle suits and doing martial arts, that's basically it. And so I guess there was some sort of TV predecessor that this character was part of, and then he got his own spin-off. And I cannot imagine how he deserved that much attention. Well, yeah, we will get into Hakaider specifically, but to touch on your previous point about the connections to Power Rangers is probably the easiest entry point that people would understand in the West. I mean, the Power Rangers itself was a phenomenon, but it is adapted from the Japanese series Super Sentai. And so in doing research for this, I realized that the Hakaider character was from a series called Nikaider. I'm sorry, Kikaider. With a K. Yeah.
Okay.
And he was just like a bad guy in that. He wasn't even like an anti-hero. He was like he worked for the villainous organization in that show. And then this movie is sort of like a almost what if story where it's like he's the good guy, which I think is kind of fun.
Okay, so he's going on he's on his like Shadow the Hedgehog redemption arc.
You see, I'm glad you brought that up because something I'm going to get into with this movie is just all of the things it reminded me of.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting because it's like I feel like you can almost see direct lines of inspiration coming from this in a good way though, because it was all things that I was previously familiar with that I liked, and I was like, dang, did they just steal that from Hakaider? Like,
Oh my goodness.
did he just do it all first? But to touch on the Tokusatsu series quickly, that series Hakaider and by extension Hakaider was created by Shitoro Ishinomori, who is a very interesting person and very relevant, I think, for this season that we're doing of like forgotten superhero stuff, because he is known in Japan as the king of manga
Okay.
and is essentially like he would be like the equivalent of like a Stan Lee, Jack Kirby in Japan. That's how like synonymous he is with like their comic industry of manga. But he was also the creator of Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, which has spawned this whole sub-series of tokusatsu.
Yeah, because Kamen Rider is like I think they're both like 50 plus years old now, both of those franchises. And Kamen Rider also had a bit of a breakthrough in the West. There was like a Kamen Rider TV show around the time of Power Rangers. It just didn't last for as long.
Yeah, well, and currently in Japan especially, the Super Sentai series just ended for the first time in like 50 years. And Kamen Rider is having a huge surge of popularity over there right now. And I think that's spilling over into the West a bit too. So they've kind of flip-flopped a bit there in terms of like which is the more popular series, but they were both originally created by him. And he even worked directly on some seasons of the Power Rangers adaptation here. He worked on...
Really?
Yeah, he was on Zeo, Turbo, and the In Space seasons.
Okay. We're going to quickly pull up our Power Rangers season tier list. Those are pretty high.
Those are good ones. Those are some
Basically,
good ones.
Yeah, the first like 5 or 6 years, people generally liked those. Turbo less so, but in space, pretty good.
Space is what turned the whole franchise around. It was on the verge of being canceled actually, but then the In Space season was so popular that it kept Power Rangers going for another 20 years after that.
Wow. So so just to recap this for my own understanding, the person who worked on Hakaider, like helped create that character, is the same man that was responsible for like Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, and had some role in Power Rangers itself. So he's just the big boss.
Yeah, and on top of all that was a huge name in the world of like manga, like Japanese comic books as well. Like several like manga and anime series that people would be very familiar with would cite him as like a direct inspiration. And I think the one that I guess I would be the most familiar with in terms of works he's created in that space would be Cyborg 009, which I don't know if you remember.
I actually don't remember that.
It had a Toonami adaptation. It wasn't one of their more popular series, but I think I tried showing a little bit of it to you one time.
Oh, wait, yes. No, I do remember this. It was, we watched like the first couple episodes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm back in. All right, so it sounds like the person behind Hakaider and the show he originally was part of is just a Stanley level, like creative influence over the entire genre, which I assume means that Hakaider is amazing and really good and really cool.
It actually is all of those things.
Oh, nice.
It's like I'm not sure where to even begin with this because it is a pretty simple narrative for this movie. And I think again the character Hakaider was a bad guy in this other series, but I think this story is completely independent from that. I think they're just like
Got it.
taking that character and putting him in a new space where we follow him as the good guy. But basically the rough beats of the story are it's like a dystopian sci-fi setting, which is always fun. It was more fun before it started to resemble the real world, but it used to be really fun.
It was cool when it was like a what if and not a what now.
Yeah, what do we do now? But no, it's a really fun looking setting, and the way we're introduced to our titular character is there's a group of like, I don't even know what to call them, like it's just like a group of like scavengers who are like looking through this abandoned laboratory because they believe there's treasure there, and they're using like explosives to like dig deeper into this abandoned space to see what they can find. And underneath the laboratory is where they discover Hakaider, and he's just like chained up, and so they inadvertently like release him from his prison, I guess.
So he's like the mummy.
He's kind of like the mummy. Yeah, that's a fair comparison.
You mustn't read from the book, and then I got it.
Yeah. If that is what makes sense to you, then yes.
Yep.
But actually, I will say, even before that, because that's like our first real scene. But the first thing you see is the Toei logo, which is the production company that released the movie, which.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's usually like the logo comes up over this sort of B-roll footage of like the ocean in Japan.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's cool. And so I'm like, all right, Toei. I've seen this before, but the way this movie starts is like the logo comes up and you see the ocean, and then we just like whip pan to the left, and that's where the abandoned science lab is. So I was like, oh, that was really cool. Like, it made it seem like we were in that space that the logo is. And I was like, I've never seen that before. That was really neat.
So canonically, anytime you see the Toei logo, you just assume Hakaider's slightly off screen.
He's slightly to the left. Yeah.
He's a little bit over there.
Yeah, it's like that one secret cutscene in Halo Reach where you can see Master Chief.
I was about to mention the secret cutscene. I was holding it in because I was like, we don't talk about video games, but no, I'm with it.
Yeah. I will say this is another movie that has a video game adaptation too.
It does. I will have to see if I can get footage captured for that. Doesn't it, like, from what I remember, it's kind of in the style of one of those like arcade gun games where it's just people poking around corners and you have to like shoot at them?
Yes, I believe that is true. The interesting thing about the game, though, well, two interesting things, because one of the other production companies listed on this movie is Sega, which I didn't know Sega was ever really in the actual filmmaking space because they're primarily a video game company.
Yeah.
But the game is a Sega Saturn game, so there was like some brand synergy there, and I don't know in what way they were involved in the actual movie, but they're the ones that made the game. It was a game that was released only in Japan, so there's no...
Right. So I might not be able to actually record my own footage for this one, because I do not own a Sega Game Gear, but we'll see.
Yeah, but the other interesting thing I was going to say about the game, from what I read, is that game, which is an adaptation of this movie, features characters from the Hakaider show that Hakaider originally came from, even though this is like a different thing.
That's okay. So they're just recombining the characters back in. That's neat. This is odd lore. I did not expect there's this much like preamble about a cool guy in a suit fighting.
Yeah, well, it was all really interesting because it was just like you sent me this movie, and I'm like, what did you call me? What is that crazy name for this? Like,
can't say that on air.
Yeah. So after I watched it and I enjoyed it, I had to kind of look into all of this though, and I was like, this is all really interesting stuff though. So I'm glad I kind of delved into this more. But to get back into the story itself, it is really straightforward, but in a way that it's still fun and interesting, because, as you said, they awaken the mummy Hakaider.
Yep, as he is known.
As he is known, I believe he because those guys that find him, they like before he even says anything, I think they start shooting at him. So they started it, and then I think I think he kills them all. I don't really know. It might be unclear. It's kind of when we're getting like our opening like credits sequences, and it's really funny because like he was all chained up, And after he like dispatches with these guys that found him, like he goes to find like his bike, his like motorcycle, and it's also chained up. I'm like, why'd you have to chain up the bike? Like it was gonna
So it
like
doesn't get away.
on its own. Like, is the bike sentient too? Like, why is it chained up?
I hope what we see next is him like looking around on the floor for the key, but then the keys are chained up too.
Well, it's funny, like you said, like the first thing that it made you think of was like Shadow the Hedgehog, which I believe we actually mentioned in last week's episode too. So I didn't think we'd be talking about the Shadow the Hedgehog video game so much, but here we are.
Yep.
Like the imagery of him on the bike in this sort of like future sci-fi city that he heads into. To me, I was like, this looks really similar to like Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, yeah.
That was like the first thing that kind of came to mind for me. And that actually continues. That like imagery continues because he gets on his bike. He literally does the Jackie Chan, like, who am I?
Like he shouts it into the sky, or he just is thinking about it?
He's just like, who am I? Like, so he's just kind of like roaming around. And so the first thing he does is he heads into this major city that we learn is like being like the citizens are being subjugated by the person who's in control of the whole city. And it's a sort of thing where it's like the outside world is mostly like desolate wasteland. And so people are kind of like congregated in this one place, but there's like a sort of evil maniacal ruler of the city. And so that's where he heads to, because I guess he doesn't know what else to do. But when he gets there and we first see the person who's in control of this place, he's like this very fancy man.
No one can escape under the iron rule of Fancy Man.
Yeah, Fancy Man's in charge. But he's wearing this like suit, this white and black suit. But then on one of the shoulders, he literally has like a one wing. So he's like a one-winged angel.
This is all very specific to Final Fantasy VII. Yeah.
It is, yeah. And I was like, that's so interesting. And then it gets even more interesting because we're introduced to like, quote unquote, like evil Hakaider. There's like another metal man in a suit who they call Michael. So he has like an angel name too.
Oh, okay.
And then he also has like a thing on his back that sort of drapes down. But later in the movie, we see he can kind of like use it as a weapon and it becomes like a wing for him too. So he's also like a one-winged angel. And I'm like, wait, yeah. Did Final Fantasy VII just get all of its inspiration from Hakaider?
It
like...
does predate the game. I want to say Final Fantasy VII came out in like the late 90s. So if this movie's 95, could be onto something. Conspiracy abound.
Yeah, it was reminding me of other things too, which I guess I won't get into too much because Final Fantasy VII is probably the thing, if anything, that people would be most familiar with that this is similar to.
Yeah, I know it's not a movie, but go watch all the cutscenes and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's basically just a movie.
Yeah. But yeah, it's really interesting. It was really interesting to see like the DNA of Hakaider in other things that I already liked and was familiar with. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I guess, this is kind of where, and it makes sense given, what I read about the creator, Shitoro Ishinomori, and how his influence is seen throughout a lot of Japanese media. He's sort of like, as it said, he's the king of manga. And
he's the king of manga.
So that was cool. But then from there, the story is really straightforward because basically, like, Hakaider's just trying to live his life. Like, he doesn't know who he is, and people just start messing with him because, he comes into this city, he's not supposed to be there. And so I think this might have been the scene you had seen previously where there's all these foot soldiers running around the city. And I don't remember how he initially gets into it with them, but basically, like, they all start attacking him. We get tons of fun action sequences of him beating up and killing them. Hakaider, just to touch on his look, actually, briefly, he's kind of like the Mandalorian.
Okay. That's a good comparison.
Yeah, because when they first meet him, he's wearing like all black. He almost just looks like a guy wearing like biker clothes. But then he has, similar to Power Rangers, he has like a morphing sequence where he puts his like full suit on and he has a helmet covering his whole face. And that's how he spends like 90% of the movie. You rarely see him with his regular human face. He's mostly suited up in his full Hakaider look. And the other character, the Michael character, who's like his, main nemesis that he fights in this movie, I don't think you ever see him without his mask on. But they're both cyborgs. I don't know if I said that before, but they're both
So he's a human-looking man who transforms into the full suit, but is cyborg as in like partially human and partially mechanical?
I believe so, although he seems to be mostly mechanical, but to look like a human, maybe?
Like a Terminator.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
many other things can we connect this back to?
Well, I mean, there's a lot, dude. To me, it's like, again, I won't get too into it because I could spend all day talking about it, but it's very Mega Man to me. Like the parallels between this and specifically like the Mega Man Zero series of games, I'm like, it's the same picture. This is the same thing. Like,
except it's the same picture, me, but you have like 24 pictures in your hands.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, it's just all of them. But yeah, I just wanted to point out because it's I think that even in itself is a subcategory within like the tokusatsu genre. I think it's called henshin, which translates to something along the lines of like transform.
Right. Because I think even stuff like the old Godzilla movies is kind of in the same broader genre category, but henshin does specifically put you in the category of all the stuff we're talking about with like Sentai and Power Rangers and Kamen Rider.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. And then from there, honestly, the rest of the movie is mostly just like fun action sequences. Like for a lot of it. I mean that opening sequence when he first gets into it with like the foot soldiers in the city goes on for a while. It ends with them like shooting him with a tank at one point. Like it's just like it's really intense and it's very, from what I saw from the movie that I recommended for you, Inframan, I feel like that one is maybe going to lean more into the like stunt martial arts work type stuff. This one is that, but maybe leaning more heavily into the like explosion and special effects side of things. Because Hakaider's pretty stiff. He's not doing like any serious karate martial arts moves. He's more like moving at like Terminator pace, but he is still punching and kicking people quite a bit.
Good. I mean, this really grounds it for me. All of this stuff that we're comparing it to and all these like general genre characteristics is just like, what would a 12-year-old boy think is the coolest thing he could possibly imagine? And it usually is some combination of like martial arts, robot, motorcycles, sunglasses, apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. I still think all of those things are cool, so I'm like, I'm with
it. You know what? Not too bad.
Not too bad, Hakaider. But yeah, like narratively from there, he gets involved with a resistance group within the city. Avalanche from Final Fantasy, but
yep.
like they even look like them. They're even like dressed the same way, and I'm like, this is so interesting. But he gets involved with them. There is a woman in that group. Her name is Kairu, I think. And there's some fun, interesting sequences with her where she's having this like recurring dream about being like attacked by a monster, and then like a knight, like a medieval knight in black armor, like shows up to save her. And then she, when she meets a Hakaider, she starts associating him with that knight. She is, I guess, the only other really like protagonist character alongside him, but she doesn't even get that much screen time really, because I guess it's worth mentioning the movie is not that long. It's I think an hour and 17 minutes, but that just means it just moves at like a blazing pace.
Yeah, it's actually the same for Inframan, so I imagine it's just the nature of the genres that they're very like short films.
Yeah, it still hits all the beats you would expect from this story. It just moves through them very quickly, which was kind of fun. I mean, like normally when we're watching these movies, I'm taking notes and stuff. And when I was watching Hakaider, I got to the end, I was like, well, it's over? I'm like, I only have like 2 notes here. Like,
Pull up your notes and it's just like motorcycle, sunglasses, cool.
yeah, pretty much. I was like, wow, that went by really quickly, but not in a bad way. Because I mean, it didn't feel like how should I say this? It didn't feel like it was missing anything. It just felt like it just moved through its story quickly. And it was exciting throughout because it just like it kind of moved from like one action sequence to the next, but like each one was unique and interesting because once Hakaider meets this group of like resistance people, they then get attacked by the foot soldiers in the city who are trying to retaliate against what Hakaider did when he first showed up. And they were also trying to crack down on this resistance group. So like most of them get killed in like an action sequence. And then Hakaider decides, okay, well, I'm going to go to the big bad's headquarters and take care of him to avenge my new buddies that I just met in this city here. And so that's what leads into the final action sequence of him like raiding this building and leads to the final showdown between him and I keep wanting to call this other character the evil Hakaider, but Hakaider's kind of the evil one in a way. Like
That's a good point.
Like he even has a line which is cool because to rewind a little bit, in Karu's dreams where she's seeing this like Black Knight character, there's like this recurring imagery where like wherever he walks, like there's like flowers on the ground and they just like burst into flames when he's nearby, I guess.
Okay.
And so in the ending action sequence with Hakaider versus Michael, the Michael character is going on this whole like monologue about how he is like justice and order and society. And there's like a flower on the desk because they're fighting in like the fancy businessman's office. And Hakaider like picks it up and he says, if you're justice, then I'm evil. And he just lights the flower, just bursts into flames. So they're definitely going for that like anti-hero thing with him, especially because he was the villain in that previous series.
Yeah.
But that was fun. And then that whole action sequence between the two of them is cool. It goes on for a while. And like for the first half, there's like no dialogue or music.
That is a weird trend with these. I had that at Inframan too, that like a lot of the action scenes cut all the other sound. It's just the inserted sound effects of all the hits, and that's it.
Yeah. This one had the added thing, like, which was kind of silly, in that they were both like metal men. So anytime they hit each other, there was like this like screen effect and sound of like metal hitting each other, And they're hitting each other so much, they're having this back and forth fight that it got ridiculous. That it was just like how much it was happening, But yeah, those two have this fun back and forth sequence. And then this part, I will say, is it's like the most Mega Man thing I've ever seen. Like after Hakaider, that is, defeats Michael, the fancy businessman who's in charge of the city shows up. And he's like talking to Hakaider, and while that's happening, like a machine takes the head off of the Michael robot and like puts him onto like a giant like misshapen kind of creature robot, and then Hakaider has to fight like that thing, and that's like the final boss. And I'm like, that is the most like video game like Mega Man type thing.
This is very, very video game coded with its logic, which I guess kind of goes back to like the roots of all of these tokusatsu, henshin, whatever films, where they all just feel like a kid playing with action figures. It's like the conflict never ends until you get bored and go home.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which is fun. I mean, you kind of have to know what you're getting into when you're sitting down to watch one of these. But I will say a fun thing about that particular action sequence, once he's fighting like the giant monster thing, is they started introducing like some quick clips of claymation, which hadn't been used anywhere previously in the film, as a way to kind of like show the scale of this robot that he was fighting.
Yeah.
some of the shots were like claymation versions of the characters where like the robot would like pick up Hakaider and like throw him around the room, you know. But I was like, oh, that's kind of fun.
That reminds me of like RoboCop. The original RoboCop has a bit of that, where like in order to
Yes.
render some of the more complicated ideas, it switches over. And honestly, all of that stuff does kind of fit together. It's like an odd combination of qualities, but to me, this whole thing kind of just sounds like RoboCop in a positive way.
That's a really good comparison because you're right. They do the exact same thing in RoboCop. And I think it works in both cases because the characters in both films are like robot characters. So it's like the claymation is very like stiff, you know, but it kind of works for the characters that it's using that style for, you know, because like when claymation Hakaider gets picked up and thrown across the room, he barely like reacts to it in a way. But
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, he's kind of like a robot man, so that kind of works in that instance. I would say if that's where your head is at visually, is comparing this to RoboCop, then you're kind of in the right place.
Okay. That is interesting. Definitely puts it in like opposite. I don't mean to keep preempting about Inframan, but definitely kind of an inversion. Inframan's very bright and sunny and old looking, whereas this one seems to be aiming for that 90s kind of grungy sci-fi atmosphere, which I know some of the things we referenced are from the 80s, but same idea.
No, totally, and I think it's good. I mean, that's we kind of planned last time that these two would be very, very similar for this double feature, the pairing Hakaider and Inframan. So that'll be interesting to hear how that one's almost the opposite. But I feel like I've maybe rambled a bit about Hakaider here, but it was interesting and fun despite being very straightforward and simple. Like, it's something that if you are a fan of this genre or type of film already, I think you would like this one. If you especially like, as I do, that like dark dystopian sci-fi kind of setting, that like cyberpunk look and like machines and people fighting against evil organizations, like it has all of that like stylistically, which really endeared it to me. So I appreciated it for that.
Yeah. I mean, I normally, when we finish these episodes, I don't instinctively think like, all right, now that we've talked about it, I can go watch the movie I asked Frank to watch. But I'm like looking at my schedule for this afternoon and I'm like, I think I could make 80 minutes for to watch Hakaider.
It's just cool. Like you really would not be disappointed, you know, because it's so like you could almost watch it in the background in a way, you know, because there's not much narratively to gleam onto. It really is mostly about the atmosphere and the action and the visuals, which I think are all good. I think it excels in all of those things that it's like highlighting for itself.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds fun. I feel like I definitely can picture this movie. I've only seen that short clip, but like I can picture it just from hearing you talk about it. Somebody listening who maybe is not as familiar, I think your best bet is to just picture RoboCop but Japanese. I'm sold. I feel like there's more we could maybe get into, but sounds like you've kind of covered your main thoughts unless I'm missing anything.
No, I mean I was thinking about that going through this, that like I guess anyone listening to this, it's going to be a lot more accessible if you are already familiar with really any of the things I've brought up in comparison to this. But if you're totally new to this space, it's kind of hard for me to put myself in that headspace of how someone else would react to this. Because I feel like if you're someone like us, you got to get pretty deep into this stuff before you find yourself watching Hakaider.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I
true.
mean?
That's true. I try not to take that for granted, is that we mostly talk about, so far, lesser seen, lesser known films, less mainstream stuff. And so while we invite people to come listen who have not seen the films themselves, that kind of puts us in the role of like illustrating it. It's like an audio drama sort of, where we have to paint the picture. But I would say if anybody heard maybe like our episode way back about Gamera, the like Godzilla style movie, that has some commonality with these types of films. So if you went back and watched that one, you'd be pretty well prepared. And even if you've never seen one, I mean, just give it a shot. It's like fun sci-fi that will have a lot of genre hallmarks that you might vaguely recognize from something else. But like you said, Frank, it's not a demanding watch. This isn't like me telling you to go watch a foreign film where you're going to have to like read and learn things.
Well, you will have to read subtitles. This film is in Japanese.
Oh, good point. Mine was dubbed, so I didn't even think about that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
watched a subtitled version of this. I'm glad that you brought up foreign film. Just I guess briefly on this because like the season theme that we're going with here is like forgotten superhero films, and I feel like this is a great example of like if you were to put this side by side with one of the previous films we've done this season, like a Supergirl, that's like a Western adaptation of a superhero, and this is a very Eastern Japanese adaptation of a superhero. So it's like you're getting a very different cultural perspective on like the same idea. And so I think that's interesting.
And I think it's an element, a lot of these Japanese style films have an element of superhero storytelling that I miss in a lot of Western stuff, which is the emphasis on, in many cases, martial arts and like general action choreography. I mean, I think maybe the only like Marvel Cinematic Universe movies that had interesting action choreography to me were the Captain America films, like the Winter Soldier movie, which are a perfect thing you can kind of transpose onto this because it's like elevated martial arts with these characters who have like superhuman strength and durability, which leads to a lot of like wire stunts mixed in. It's really fun. It's like my favorite type of action choreography is that. I'm so much less engaged by just like Iron Man shoot a gun.
Sure. There's ways to make that other stuff interesting too. There's ways to make anything look interesting, if it's executed properly. But yeah, I mean, again, I'm glad you brought up Winter Soldier because that's possibly my favorite film to come out of the entire MCU, and a lot of it has to do with the way that the action is like choreographed and shot in that movie. It's so much fun, and that one just has like a fun spy espionage thing to it too.
Right, that one's combining that with the espionage thriller, but I would say the action in that film to me reads heavily as being inspired by the types of stuff we're talking about today. Just dudes in super suits doing crazy stunts and kicks and such.
Yeah, exactly. It's just fun. It's like fun.
It's just fun. All right. Do you hate fun? Then get out. Otherwise, Mechanical Violator is for you.
Exactly. The last thing I'll say about and this ties into the Captain America and these movies too is that it's storytelling through action, which I think is extremely interesting, and when executed well, extremely engaging and just very visually pleasing too. Again, especially like just to quickly mention that like final fight again between Hakaider and the character Michael, like it's like a solid 6-7 minutes with, like I said, no dialogue, no music, and it's just kind of these two going back and forth, but telling a story. It's like they're fighting and Hakaider's winning, but then Michael, he has that secret weapon on his back, and now he has the advantage, and it's like you're watching it and it's just visually telling you this story through action and like body movement, and that stuff to me is really great.
Yeah, it's physical struggle. It's akin to why people like sports in a way. Like it's choreographed and it's more deliberate storytelling, but you can get invested in action choreography the way you would care about, a football game or something. It's kind of just like the human athleticism mixed with I don't know. We're driven by conflict. We're dumb people.
Well, I mean, conflict is the heart of, that's filmmaking. It's like you're looking for what's the conflict of every scene. I was also going to compare, I've always actually compared action choreography, stage choreography, that kind of stuff to dance as well, like dance choreography.
Oh, yeah.
It's, it's story through motion of like the human body. Which is just very like base and very like something you can easily connect with, I think, but not easy to tell or demonstrate a story in an interesting way by doing that. It's certainly not an easy thing to do in many cases, but again, when it's done well, and especially in the format of like something like this, when it's shot in a way that highlights that too, that's just some of my favorite things to engage with.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've given the hard sell Do you like fun or dancing or sports or Final Fantasy VII? Hopefully at least one. That you might enjoy. It's still the weirdest title. Mechanical Violator Hakaider. With that, Frank, I think we're clear to head into our intermission. And on the other side of the break, we'll get to hear about the other side of this Tokusatsu coin when I talk about 1975's Super Inframan. So stay tuned for that.
Yep.
Yeah, Frank will be there. All right. A little bit of late breaking news here during our intermission segment. The film that Frank co-produced, that we have been talking about ever since our podcast began, is now finally available to rent or to own through Amazon Prime Video. That film is entitled Nate and Mariah in Venice. It is an independent drama shot entirely on location in Venice, Italy, about a dysfunctional couple that travels to Venice in order to rekindle their relationship as sort of a last-ditch effort before things fall apart completely. It is a fantastic film. I, of course, have seen it. I might even be in the special thanks at the end. You'll have to watch it to find out. But again, if you want to see the film and you want to support independent creators, it is available now to rent or to purchase through Amazon Prime Video. It is a Sardonic Motion Pictures production. And again, my co-host Frank was the co-producer on it, so please go check it out. Link is in the description for this episode. Thank you. All right, coming back from the other side of the break, Frank, now we turn things over to the movie you asked me to watch, 1975's Super Inframan. Remind us, and the folks at home, what was the inspiration for selecting Inframan?
Well, I think maybe both of us had a similar idea when we were talking about the theme of this season. I certainly knew going in, I was like, I'm going to try and find something from this genre, like a tokusatsu superhero movie. And I don't remember exactly how I stumbled on Inframan, but I do remember seeing a Roger and Ebert review of it. And
did you say Roger and Ebert?
Sorry, Siskel and Ebert. Yeah, it's just like it was just Roger
Ebert's
Ebert.
One man for those at home.
He was just doing that like golem thing in the water where he was talking to himself.
They stole it from us.
Like one of them's like talking about Inframan, and then the other one's just like nobody likes you. But it was the review was funny to me because he's like this is crazy, it's so wacky, there's never been anything like this before, and then Siskel, I think I might have them confused, but I think it's Siskel. He just jumps in because they were always so sassy with each other, and he's like, well, no, I mean, there's Ultraman that existed already, but anyway, just kind of like shuts him down. But it's funny because neither of them, like, even in that retort where he's like, oh, well, Ultraman's a thing, it's like, well, there's also a ton of other things too. Like, this is a whole thing in Japan that this was like their first time experiencing it.
That is interesting. I did find actually a different point of reference about Roger Ebert's thoughts on Inframan after I was done watching the movie, because I guess it was one of the only like recorded instances where he like revised a score for a film later, and apparently like 20 years after he first reviewed it, he bumped it up like half a star.
Really? Wait, see, like that's so funny to me. That's why I think that this episode is a good idea, and like I said, why I wanted to come in with one of these, because I feel like it's something where if like people are only familiar with like Power Rangers, they'll be like, that was a show for kids, or that's a show I saw when I was a kid and then stopped watching. But there's a lot of like entertainment value here, and so I think if more people saw it, I think more people would appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, I do think that Inframan being from the 1970s helps that impression for Ebert make more sense, because I definitely would assume that like Japanese film and TV exports had increased by the time we reached the mid-90s. And it was more like, I don't know, like we had a better understanding in the West of like their kind of pop culture exports. Whereas in the 70s, it would have been probably genuinely baffling just sitting down to watch a movie that had been localized for here and seeing Inframan. Because you'd be like, what on earth is happening? Like, it's so unlike anything the West had ever created. And it's also so different to now where like media is so globalized that like everything feeds on itself and turns into kind of like hybridized content. It was so explicitly foreign, was probably sitting down to watch this movie in the 70s, that I can only imagine Ebert just being like, wow, I've never seen this in my whole ass life.
Yeah, and I do wonder too, would it have been the dubbed version of it then? Or
That's a good point.
I don't know if the dub came later.
I do have some pre-production level context about Inframan in the version that I saw. I watched the movie. I rented it through YouTube. I think it's one of those ones you can rent for like $3 for 48 hours. And I didn't know when it started that this is actually not a Japanese production. It was made in China. Like, it's a Hong Kong martial arts film first and foremost.
Oh, okay, cool. All right.
Right? Yeah, because most of
I didn't know that.
Most of these are Japanese, but in the 70s in Hong Kong, stuff like Ultraman and Kamen Rider was so popular that they made their own and like copied the style and essentially just created their own original character. So Inframan stands alone. It's like a Hong Kong produced movie that obviously shares the same DNA, but the original film was in Mandarin. And then the movie that I watched the other day, only available as an English dub, which was very interesting. I thought nowadays it was more common to find original audio with a subtitle option, which I would have used. But instead I got literally the most stereotypical kung fu movie dub experience that people used to make fun of all the time, where you'd watch an old martial arts movie on TV and there would just be this like horribly matched English dubbing. So right away I was like, oh gosh, is this gonna like mess with my experience of the movie? And it did not, because there was a weird authenticity to it where like in a lot of examples of this, they would change the character names to be like really American. There'd just be this Chinese guy named like Derek, or like something that clearly didn't fit. But in Super Inframan, the characters all still have their Chinese names and they're also pronounced correctly, which I was impressed by. I was like, whoa, they like tried to actually do this correctly rather than just butchering it with some like terrible localization. So it is dubbed, but it's a good dub.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, it's also really good to hear that this is a Chinese produced film. I actually never would have thought of that. I just saw it and assumed it came from Japan because of what it was.
Rightly so. 90% of them do, especially at that time. But it was made by like the Shaw Brothers production company, which at one point in time is like the biggest production company in China and is essentially credited with like inventing the kung fu movie genre. They made like hundreds of those films for decades. And so this just kind of slots right in alongside all of those, but with the added flavor of being like a Henshin Power Rangers-esque story instead.
Oh, cool. All right. That's great. I'm
right? It's interesting.
I'm more into it now. Yeah.
Yeah. The other reason it didn't matter that it was a dub is because much like the one you talked about, Hakaider, very little dialogue and virtually no story to tell. I mean, this movie, nothing happens. It's like outside of the context of why there's action on screen. The setup is bare minimum. The movie begins. You're seeing a school bus full of children singing in Mandarin because they didn't want to dub that part. And then a Godzilla pterodactyl monster just like crashes in front of the bus and like causes an earthquake. And they're all like, ah! And then we cut away from that. We never see those people again. Presumably they all died. I don't know. And then we cut straight from that to some city that is just engulfed in flames, completely beyond saving. Everything's on fire. People are running. We cut away from that. Once again, we never see that again. Just 20 seconds in, they're like, you don't understand. Monsters. That's all we need to communicate. There's monsters now. And then like the other 95% of the movie takes place at this like scientific research base in front of a big satellite dish. And the whole time I was like, are we going to go back to those people that were on fire? And I was like, nope, that was just some set dressing, just to give you an idea.
Just somebody like surrounded by fire, like, man, sure wish there was a Inframan around here.
Yeah,
help
no,
us
Inframan's
out.
not helping anybody. Inframan does not save anybody. He just fights people.
He's just a hooligan.
Just a hooligan. Like, the story becomes so narrow that, much like the one I was talking about with you, it feels like a kid playing with action figures who only has so many resources. Because once we get that bizarre, hasty introduction to the concept that monsters have appeared on Earth, the only two sets we ever really get are this scientific research base that is just this cartoonish, enormous room full of like glowing lights and buttons, and the supervillain base, which is this really cool, sort of like He-Man, Masters of the Universe looking set with like skull-faced doorways and like a flowing, like bubbling river that's all pink. It's super cartoonish. And those are kind of like our two ends of the spectrum. We're just watching the villains try to attack the base, and occasionally the good guys try to attack their base, and that's it.
So the villains are new here? They just showed up and started causing havoc? Like,
yes, that's a good question. So the villains, as is hastily explained by these completely unintelligible job that the main characters have. Like, they're wearing lab coats, sort of, but they almost look like astronauts, and they work underneath a big satellite dish. But the guy in charge is called a professor instead of like a commander. Essentially, they're just like science kung fu fighting force. And they
awesome.
Discover, yeah, I know, right? They discover that monsters have risen from beneath the earth that predate all recorded history. Like, they quickly surmise that these things have been buried underground since like before the Ice Age and have just appeared for some reason and are here to like enslave humanity.
Cool. Okay. That's great.
And it's a very, very amusing crop of characters that make up the bad guy team, because it really just looks like somebody raided a costume store and just added everybody they could find. Like, you know how in Power Rangers, like serialized TV shows in this genre, there's like a monster of the week kind of mechanic, or just some weird like turtle monster guy shows up with no background and we blow him up. And then the next week it's like a handbag monster, just random nonsense.
Handbag monster.
They do that. In Power Rangers, they're always
Yes.
turning like everyday items into creatures. So it'll be like, oh no, my purse is now Personator. Like
Personator. I like that. I like Personator. We should. Yeah.
And they have the power to impersonate people. Hear me out.
Are you sketching Personator?
Yeah. That's going to be our new original Tokusatsu villain, Personator. I can impersonate you or hold money.
For you, I can be your bank.
I can be your bank. Yeah. Anyway, Personator, TM. So those are the villains in Super Inframan. There's like henchman army of like little skeleton guys in like Party City outfits. And then there's like 8 or 9 totally unrelated monster dudes that just hang out with the main bad lady, who have no cohesion in their designs at all, but just kind of attack Super Inframan one at a time.
Okay. Yeah, as you do. One at
As
a time.
you
You
do.
gotta play it fair. Play it fair.
They got to play fair. I think at the end they go for a 2v1, which they probably were like, we didn't want to do this, but we're low on resources.
We're running out of time.
Running out of time. This movie's 80 minutes long. So the main bad person is just this human-looking lady who has like an evil outfit on. And the dub did change her name. I think in the original Mandarin, she was called like Princess Elzebub, kind of in the line of like Beelzebub, the devil. But for some reason in the English dub, her official name is Princess Dragon Mom.
Dragon Mom?
Yeah.
She's Khaleesi?
Yeah. Good one. So
Thank you.
I kept seeing that in the captions and assuming that it was wrong because they were like YouTube captions. I was like, okay, it's probably like Dragon Ma, like M-A. And I was like, no. Dragon Mom, Mother of Dragons, even though she's a dragon and nobody else is. Anyway, Princess Dragon Mom is just like your classic regular villain with no real motivation beyond just being an evil person. And she has an army of these like villain of the week monsters and then a henchman army of little skeleton dudes. So that's the bad guy team. The good guy team is the scientists who all know martial arts, one of whom becomes Super Inframan, and the rest of whom still help, oddly enough. It's not a one-man show.
Oh, well, because, I mean, they know martial arts. And they're scientists.
They're scientists, but they're the military, but they have martial arts abilities, but they're astronauts? I don't know.
And with these to rewind, the skeletons, the little skeleton people that Khaleesi has, like, those are like putties? Would they be the equivalent of that?
They are the equivalent of putties. They are the like boring foot soldiers that you can easily dispose of. And then the villain of the week monsters are varying levels of power. And throughout the movie, you actually try to enact like a number of different schemes to destroy the like science research base. So it's like there's a tier system.
Cool. Okay. Great. And so the scientists, they can help fight the skeletons. They're like science punch, like science kick.
Science punch. H2 ow. Write that down.
They're just holding like beakers full of chemicals and just like punching you with those.
Yeah, pretty much. So the thing that makes the story focus very funny to me is that there's no reason why the villain should be so concerned with the scientists. It should only be the other way around. Like, of course, they observe where the monsters came from underneath the surface of the earth, and they know where their base is. But the only explanation we get for why the villains target them is that they know they're observing them. Like, Princess Dragon Mom is like, we don't want them looking at us like that. So we have to destroy them before we do anything else, even though our ultimate goal is to enslave the earth. But we have to blow up this one research base because they keep pointing that satellite at us.
I mean, valid. Quit what you looking at. Like, mind your business.
Mind your business. I just found that part so funny because, like, there's a sort of implication, given those bizarre scenes at the beginning, that maybe, like, there is other violence happening all around the world and we're just not seeing it. But the way the movie's depicted, it's as if everything stops until this particular turf war between science fighters and the villains can be resolved.
Well, yeah, so the monster that like attacked the school bus in the other city, that was related to what Khaleesi is doing, or no? That was...
It all happened at once. The monsters all spawned at once, and Khaleesi is in charge. So presumably it's all connected. But first off, that monster that crashed in front of the school bus immediately despawns. He just disappears. He was like dead, but for no reason.
Oh, okay.
So maybe the monsters fight each other sometimes? It's completely unclear.
He got dropped off the battle bus, and then he got sniped.
He got sniped from the battle bus. He didn't even hit the ground. He just was like, he didn't stay to watch the rest of the match either. He was like, I'm just going back into matchmaking. Yeah. And then it was just like, Spider Dino 27 has left the game. So that's, I think, an important piece of context. This is technically a global catastrophe that will end life as we know it, but really it feels like a gang war between Team Science and Team Monster that only encompasses like 1 square mile of the Earth.
It's very important. I mean, they were looking at him funny.
They're looking at him funny. They're like, stop observing me. And it's like, you're going everywhere. Everyone's observing you, but they're like, yeah, but they pointed that big dish at us and I don't like it.
I don't like that big dish.
I don't like that dish. So the rhythm of this is that at the beginning of the story, Super Inframan does not exist, but after the initial attack on the Earth with the despawning dinos, there's this professor guy. For some reason, he's called a professor, even though he seems like he's more of like a science officer in charge of a research facility. He, in the classic fashion, again, kind of like Mega Man again, he's been devising a schematic to create a superhero called Inframan, who, oh my God, hold on. I'm going to quickly look up what he says powers Inframan, because I want to say Inframan is powered by a nuclear reactor.
Yes, Nuclear Man. It's just like the quest for peace.
It is just like the quest for peace. That's a good point. Let me make sure I have that right.
I'm just thinking about what this guy could be a professor of. I'm imagining him as a professor of karate. He's just like a professor of these hands, and then he just goes out fighting people.
These hands, yeah. Just like, wow, he's so smart. He punched me real good.
Dang, now I'm dumber than he is, so I guess he is smarter than me.
Now that's a good gimmick. He takes IQ points off every time he lands a hit, and you're like, quick, cover up.
Cover up. Oh, I forgot how.
Okay, so I was correct that Inframan is powered by robo parts, adrenaline, they specify adrenaline, and third thing, a miniature nuclear reactor.
Nice. Oh, so it's also like the Shadow, where he's like, so you're talking about some kind of nuclear bomb. I don't remember what he said. Atomic bomb, yeah.
Yeah. I just found that really funny that the key ingredients are miniature nuclear reactor, parentheses, just regular adrenaline.
Yeah, dude, he's got to drink some Surge. He's got to
Surge. It's like, also, we need your testosterone to be like way up. All right, we got to get high T and also a nuke.
You're going to get your T so high, it's going to be a nuke.
It's going to be crazy. Your IQ's going to go crazy.
IQ's going to go crazy. It's like, that's a little too high. We got to knock him on the head a few times, bring that down a bit.
Gotta bring that back down. So that's the initial setup, including a lot of extraneous details. But essentially, after the first attack on the research base, right, the best kung fu science man that they have is given the opportunity to become Super Inframan. And they do the classic thing where they're like, this is going to be a really dangerous procedure. You could die. You're going to feel extreme pain. And so this gives you this extended sequence where the base is already being attacked while they're trying to finish the procedure to create Inframan. And then like the other scientists have to like fight to keep the power on so that like they can finish the procedure. And then lo and behold, Inframan is born and immediately like turns the tide, and that's kind of just the rest of the movie.
Well, that sounds great. I love that.
It's really honestly, the first word I have to describe that scene is adorable, because
Adorable. Okay.
the first villain of the week monster that Princess Dragon Mom Khaleesi sends in looks like somebody took the Statue of Liberty and like halfway melted it, because it's just this big green tentacle plant monster with like a sunken in face who looks really goofy. But much like in Hakaider, when he starts trying to infiltrate the base, he like digs into the floor as like a plant root and then pops up inside the building. But they do that using like claymation stop motion miniatures, and it just looks really cute.
Yeah, okay. No, I mean, claymation is kind of adorable. It's like, you can't really take it serious. It's kind of creepy sometimes, but like...
It's creepy, but it's really funny just watching him like drill into the ground and then he pops out again. But that scene does kind of go bigger than I think it's going to, because he's like a human-sized monster, but then he shrinks down, and then instead of him appearing, you just see all these giant tentacle arms start showing up that are like crazy big. Like he essentially envelops the entire research base, and his like tentacle arms are like shooting through windows, and people are like holding onto them and getting thrown around the room. So it's this very chaotic scene that is juxtaposed with like Inframan being born. So it's a pretty effective action beat in the first act before our hero even really arrives.
That's great. I feel like, given that this was like China's first attempt at like a tokusatsu superhero movie, I feel like they went all out, you know? They put their whole personator into it on this one.
Put their whole personator in it. I swear, by the end of this episode, we're going to have artwork for personator. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, good for them. That sounds great.
It is fun. That's probably my favorite of the villain attack sequences in the movie, because eventually Inframan is born, he comes out, he starts helping them like beat all the tentacles, and he, because we often talk about superpowers, he does have X-ray vision. So he's able to see inside the plant arms to where the like heart of the monster is, and he attacks there, which forces it to revert to like its human-sized form, and then they can just have like a classic kind of 1v1 martial arts fight.
Oh, nice. Well, it's because his T is so high. That's how he can see through
His
things.
testosterone is so high he can see through walls.
Wait, and why did they pick him again? Was it because he was the smartest scientist or the best at karate?
Best at karate. These guys don't do any science, okay? Don't let them tell you otherwise. There's no beakers. They just have buttons. They got a bunch of glowing buttons that clearly don't do anything. The bad guy also has a console full of buttons that don't do anything.
They're just there to look good. They're just to have some sweet LEDs.
They're just there to look
set
cool.
The vibe.
But to answer your question, yes, the main guy, who I believe the character's name is Lei Ma, played by actor Danny Lee, just is chosen because they're the protagonist and they're the best, and they're gonna take on the mantle of being Inframan. It's very much like a heroic moment where he's like, I don't care if this procedure kills me, I want to save the world. Or at least this one square block we're fighting over.
Did they name him like beforehand? They're like, you're gonna be Inframan? Like, this is the name we voted on? Or
yes, the Professor IQ man says that the design is for the Inframan, and even at the end of the movie, the bad guy's trying to get him to make another one, and she just says, make me a new Inframan. So it's like, if you're in the suit, that's your name.
Okay, and everybody just knows that. Everyone is familiar.
Instantly familiar. He never says his name out loud, but the bad guys see him, and they're like, he made it Inframan. So I guess it's a known thing.
Yeah, he's got to go get his ID changed at the DMV.
Yeah, that's why he misses the first battle.
It's a long line.
A long line, yeah. So everything past this point, I think, starts to line up with Hakaider's story, where it's like, now that the action has begun, it kind of just never stops. The rhythm of it doesn't make any sense, because like Inframan fights the melted Statue of Liberty guy, and much like the scene you were talking about, the music cuts out, there's no dialogue, there's just these bizarre, abrasive sound effects constantly playing while they're hitting each other, which maybe got better by the 90s. In the 70s, the sound design is atrocious. It's so annoying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Bells and whistles and alarms. I hate it. So he fights that guy, he beats him, he blows him up, and then indeterminate amount of time passes, and then the villain, rather than just sending the whole army, just picks like one other person, and is like, now you go try to break down the research base.
Oh. It literally is one at a time. They're just like, well, all right, what's your best pitch for how we can do this?
Pretty much. They're outsourcing to contractors where like the first guy is like, I'll sneak in with my plant powers. And then one of them is like, I'm going to blow up the base from underneath with TNT, but not because I'm an exploding monster, because I literally brought dynamite with me. So just a series of plans that fail, and then like the next day, everyone just acts like nothing's wrong. Like in between a couple of these attacks, we find the professor's kids just like hanging out by the research base, like having the time of their lives. I'm like, hold on. The monsters attacked yesterday. They're gonna attack tomorrow. Why are you just hanging out here?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because this sounds like the setup for an episodic series as opposed to just one film.
Oh, it does. This feels like 10 episodes of Inframan shoved into 80 minutes. Which makes the pacing just nonsense. Like the lack of clarity for how much time is passing in between each attack makes it sound like they keep forgetting the monsters exist. Because they'll just be like back to normal, and then it's like, another one? And it's like, they have another one. There's always another one.
I don't know, keep that adrenaline up, man.
Your T is going down.
T is going down. Gotta get it up.
Gotta go work out or something. I don't know. What gives you more T?
That's what they're trying to figure out. That's what all the science speakers are for. They're like, I don't know how any of this works.
I put the adrenaline in. I put the nuclear reactor in his chest. His T's just not high enough. So that's really the rest of the movie, is just the next day, another monster shows up. Inframan eventually gets there and beats him. The only wrinkle in the second act is that one of the other science people gets kidnapped and brainwashed. So that's one of the attempts, is that they brainwash a science dude and they send him back to the base to sabotage it.
It's just like the Shadow.
Just like the Shadow, exactly. The Shadow might have been here. I mean, it really sounds like he was involved.
He was just off to the side. He was one of the other monsters. And they're like, what's your plan, Shadow? And he was like, I don't really understand my own powers even, so I can't help you here.
Pretty dark out. I don't think I cast a Shadow out here.
I got a gun.
Got a gun. 2 guns. Hopefully folks at home heard our previous episode about the Shadow, or else that's going to be really nonsensical. So I will zoom into this thing with the saboteur, because it is pretty funny what happens to him. He is specified to be Inframan's friend. Among all these totally same looking people who work at the base and wear the same outfit, that one's his friend. And so he's sad that he got kidnapped. But then when he comes back, he's just like, they're like, what happened? We saw them kidnap you. And he's like, nah, nothing happened. I didn't even see him, which is just obviously untrue. And they're like, they believe him. They're like, okay, cool. Back at it. Go rest up.
Yeah. Go rest up.
And then
got a lot of science to do tomorrow.
Got a lot of science to do tomorrow. I need your tea. The only person who's suspicious of this guy is this other character whose name I do not remember, but is notable because they're played by an actor called Bruce Lee.
No.
L.E., who, to my understanding, made an entire career off of trying to slot into Bruce Lee-esque roles after Bruce Lee had died.
Oh my goodness.
He's a knockoff. He's like a knockoff Bruce Lee, because
he's Timu Bruce Lee.
Timu Bruce Lee. And then Inframan's like, what's that about tea? And they're like, no, not that guy.
No, calm down, buddy.
So Bruce Lee was very famous, obviously, but only really after he died, and he only made a certain number of films. So there was this huge market for reselling his movies after he passed, but people needed to make more. So I guess this guy Bruce Lee, with one E, just started slotting in, because he was also a martial artist. He had a similar haircut. He just pretended to be the next best thing. And he gets slotted into this movie, but for some reason, he's not the main character. He's a supporting cast guy who's just somewhat involved in this sequence where he realizes that the one guy's been brainwashed. And then he has a couple of fight scenes, but nothing big.
Wow. Maybe that was before he started maybe this is where he came up with the idea. Where he was like, I could be Infra Bruce Lee.
Infra Bruce. Yeah. Something. I don't know. I just found it very strange that they have this like specific trendy knockoff martial artist guy. Not that he's a knockoff, like he can't do it. He's good, but he's donning a persona that's not his. But he's not the main character. I'm surprised he would allow that.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I wonder if they still, like, if that was the plan, like, if his name was still on the advertising, like on the billboards and stuff, the posters.
I don't know. I'd have to look more into it, but he is like the only other scientist martial artist guy with any real screen time. It's your main guy, Inframan, your brainwashed guy, and Bruce Lee are the only ones who really have anything to do. To quickly recap the end of the Saboteur story, though, so that guy's plan to infiltrate fails. He gets found out by Bruce Lee, he runs away, it leads to another fight scene with one of the other villains who, I don't know what this one's name is, but like, appearance-wise, do you remember the first episode of Digimon where they land in a digital world and there's this giant like beetle monster that shows up who's like orange?
Kawagamon.
I have that guy that I'm about to talk about in my notes as Kawagamon because that's what he looks like.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So we had Melted Statue of Liberty, we had Kawagamon, there's a Drill Claw Man, there's some Springhead robots. It's very nonsensical group of people. But the Saboteur thing like fails ultimately. That guy just ends up having to hang out with the villains for the rest of the movie because obviously now they know he's brainwashed. And then they don't save that guy. He just dies. The villain just throws him down a pit and he's dead.
Down a pit? Where'd the pit come from? He just had a pit on hand?
She mentions earlier in the movie while brainwashing him in her Skeletor base that she has a bottomless pit that she's going to throw him into. And then later on, she throws him down a very much bottom-full pit that is only like 10 feet deep and has fire at the bottom. And so he dies. And I'm like, that really is not a bottomless pit. I can see the bottom. He's at the bottom. He's dead.
That's how she tricks him. She's like, you'll be fine. It's bottomless.
He'll just fall forever.
The bottom.
Yeah. And then instead, it's essentially the pit from like Temple of Doom, where you just throw him to the bottom and then they burn up and die. So that's it. The Saboteur does not get rescued. He does not break free of his brainwashing. He just outlives his usefulness and then is killed.
Well, he did a bad thing. He shouldn't have been kidnapped and then brainwashed. That's kind of on him,
And I think the only thing he accomplishes is that he literally takes photographs of the blueprints for Inframan so that the villains can try to like find a weakness.
Did they do that?
This part makes very little sense. So to kind of keep moving while answering that question, Inframan's finishing move for the first half of the movie is a wrist laser thing where like he's mostly doing martial arts, like some pretty intense kung fu, but he'll sort of like cross his arms and fire a little laser out of his right wrist that tends to be pretty effective. He blows up multiple monsters with it. And then the bad guy finds out that the way it's said in the dub, he's powered by the sun, which is not true. We just said he's powered by a nuclear reactor and a bunch of testosterone, but apparently he's powered by the sun.
And adrenaline.
So then she blots out the sun, like 300. And it only disables the wrist laser. Like, that's it. He has his finishing move is powered by the sun, but the rest of it is...
Well, and that's what she learned from the blueprints that the brain-controlled guy got for them?
Yeah, see, you're following the story. Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, that's fair.
So, she does disable his finishing move. He can't hit the Stone Cold Stunner anymore because they blotted out the sun. But what's funny is, he just invents a new one on the spot. He's like, I can't do the wrist laser anymore. I'm going to do a rocket boot drop kick instead, which is obviously better anyway.
Rocket boot drop kick? What?
He's got like Iron Man thrusters on the bottom of his feet. So he'll just jump at one of the villains with both of his feet up in the air and like turn the rockets on and then just like drop kick him in the chest and they blow up.
Oh, that's sick.
It's so much better. Like, if your whole thing is kung fu, why was your original finisher, I'm going to stand still and hit you with a laser beam?
That's just when he got, like, tired.
He's like, gosh, thank goodness the sun is here. Keeps my nuclear bomb moving.
He had to build up his special meter. He had to do enough combos to get the special laser attack. And then I guess the rocket jump attack.
The rocket jump was like his ultimate special. That's like where it turns into like a cutscene.
Yeah. But you still got to do the combos to build up the meter.
To build up the special meter. Yeah, that makes sense. That tracks. So that's like an awkward part of the dub. because they literally say he's powered by the sun. This will disable him. And ultimately, all they mean is like, it'll turn off his wrist rocket, which again, it's so granular. This villain is here to take over the whole world. And yet her plan, her evil, spooky monster plan is like steal a blueprint so that I can analyze it for weak points.
You got to start somewhere, man. She's a small business, okay? She's trying to like.
She's like, I need data analytics, okay? I need to be a change agent.
She's like, which one of you monsters can build me a website? Like, what are we doing here?
We're trying to influence.
Shadow, put those guns away.
Shadow, put those guns away. We need to influence sentiment. We need a bot network. Yeah. It's bizarre. None of the aesthetics of the movie like congeal into anything. They all look very charming. Like the supervillain hideout base is awesome. There's like an entrance where you walk in through a staircase into like the mouth of like a skeleton of a monster. It's so crazy.
Cool. I mean, that's great. Sounds like awesome production design.
It's awesome. Like, it's so cartoonish. And like I said, kind of reminds me of like the He-Man. Like, it looks like a toy set. Like, even at the end of the movie, the last big action sequence, which covers the last like 20 minutes, is that the professor is captured along with his daughter. And so Inframan has to go rescue them. But he brings his whole science squad. And then there's just like a turf war fight with all these putties that takes place in like a skeleton graveyard. There's all these like unearthed monster skeletons that are really big, and they're fighting in this like, it kind of looks like the elephant graveyard from Lion King, I guess.
Okay, all right, sick.
And they just have this giant like 50-on-50 brawl that Inframan is just in the middle of, and then he kind of moves on from that into the base to go do his final series of fights with the remaining villains. But that's maybe where the action peaks for me, because the first couple of bits, like special effects wise, they were fun, but the actual martial arts is pretty simple. And this part at the end does ratchet it up quite a bit just by going nuts. They're just throwing people into stuff and off ledges. This seems very like loose, kind of dangerous martial arts choreography.
Like, just go out there and have fun, guys. And like, shouldn't we plan this? No. Just
go have fun.
Just kick the person nearest to you and just see what happens.
Just the power of tea and kung fu and you'll be fine. I will say, as a point off Inframan, for some reason, there's oddly repetitive fight choreography in here. Like, they clearly have sequences that they know how to do, and they'll repeat them way too many times. Like, the skull soldier dudes, right? Just like the low-level grunts. Most of them have these little, like, spears, and there's a sequence they keep doing over and over again, where two of them try to stab Inframan at the same time, and he grabs both of the spears and blocks them, and then kind of like karate chops both dudes in the neck at the same time, and they fall down. And I swear they do that 6 or 7 times.
Oh, well, they had to reuse the animations. It is just like the old He-Man show. You just
yeah. You can just you just do like the stock animations, but it's a real man, so I just don't understand. It felt like, again, they weren't choreographing individual fights. They were just using their general kind of like martial arts exhibition skills and just plugging them in where they could. He also does like a judo toss over and over again that's like really noticeable. I don't know why they draw so much attention to it if they're going to keep repeating the same sequences.
I wonder if this was intended to be multiple episodes of a show that got stitched together into a movie, because that would make sense.
That would explain a lot of it.
If it's like once per episode he does a judo flip, then you're like, okay, but if you're seeing it 6 or 7 times in one film, it's like, why does he keep doing that judo flip?
Why does he keep doing that same judo flip? Yeah, I get he needs to build his special meter up, but come on.
Stop being lazy, Inframan.
It would also explain why I think we get the full Super Inframan transformation sequence like 4 different times, where he like does the pose and he morphs, and then he does like a series of backflips and then like a bit of a Superman flying pose. And every time they show the full scene, which also feels like a once per episode staple of a series and not something you put 4 times into a movie.
Absolutely. That's the vibe I'm getting here. Also, real quick, since you mentioned Superman, I did see one of the posters for Super Inframan has like a Temu Superman symbol on the cover. Like, it's like the Superman S in the shield, but it's just like slightly off. And so I assume that was like something in the marketing to be like, look, this is like Chinese Superman? Is Inframan?
Maybe. I mean, Superman is the most like obvious superhero imagery that exists. And so I could see them even just for the American release of the film trying to be like, look, it's like Superman. I do know that they gave him a moniker for the American release in the advertising that was like like the Man of Bionics or something, which was supposed to capitalize on like the $6 million Man TV show or something. So they did add aspects to him promotionally for an American audience. So yeah, I don't know. Like we've covered a lot of the weird, strange elements of Super Inframan. I feel like this one is less accessible than the one you talked about, Frank, where if you've never seen a Tokusatsu movie and you start here, you're going to be like, what is this? Like it's so messy and odd. It's very creative and the kung fu is pretty neat, but it is mostly interesting more so for someone like you or I who has seen a lot of these things before and would be curious to watch like, the Chinese attempt at the same idea or just like this character who never really came back and is only in this one film. It's a novelty, but definitely not as obvious of a crowd pleaser, I think, as the one that you watched.
Well, it's also really early. Like, I want to say, Kamen Rider Super Sentai was like late 60s, early 70s when it started. So this one adapting that or being its own interpretation of that, it's a very early adapter as well. So, I mean, even if you were watching like early Japanese tokusatsu, it would be from like the 70s. So I imagine that's all very rough, because it's sort of like the foundation of that subgenre.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why I picked this one though, almost, because that was interesting to me. I was just like, right out of the gate, what are they doing with this?
I liked it. I liked having a chance to see something this like comparatively unpolished and also more tied to some of the aesthetics of like the 70s. I found it very charming, not always super engaging. It genuinely found a way to sort of drag despite being less than 90 minutes long, just because there wasn't enough of that like atmosphere to keep it engaging in the slower beats. But it's still fun. Like if you like this kind of thing, you might enjoy Super Inframan. If you're really not that well versed, you'd be better off sticking to something like more recognizable.
Yeah, between the two, if we're introducing them to a newcomer to this type of film, I guess Hakaider would be the better choice. But Inframan sounds great to me. I'm gonna order my Inframan action figure right after this. So,
oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, it does not have a video game. I don't even know if Inframan ever returned. I think the movie did well, but I don't know that it ever spawned any other media. People liked it, but it is very dated, and so you can kind of take that what you will. I am trying to remember now, because I did look up a Roger Ebert quote about the movie, and I think the context for why he changed his rating was that at the time, he gave it like 2.5 stars out of 4. And he was like, this movie's crazy. I can't believe it. And then like 20 years later, he was at a showing of a different Tokusatsu movie that was being shown in the US, and he gave that one a 3 and wrote some article where he was like, what did he say? He was like, not a month has gone by that I have not thought about Inframan since I saw it, which is insane. And then he was like, I guess for anybody who's ever curious if I've ever like revised a rating, I can't give this one I just saw a higher rating than Inframan. So in retrospect, I'm going to bump Inframan up to a 3 out of 4.
Oh my God, we found the true love of that man's life was Inframan.
He knows nothing else about the genre, but he really liked Inframan because it was so... I think he was often coming from this perspective of like, it's not just about the like academic structure of what makes a good movie. It's about unique experiences told in film format. And he felt that Super Inframan for that time was so daring and unlike anything he had seen that it just kind of had to be seen to be believed. And I totally respect that. So I think it deserves its place. It's also the first Chinese superhero movie, period.
Cool. Yeah. See, Inframan, he has a place in history, which is good. Yeah.
He's, even to this day, we could bring him back to sell testosterone supplements if he wants.
He's going to keep them all for himself. He needs those. Or he's going to explode or something? I don't remember.
Either the nuke goes off, impersonator's going to get him. I don't know.
Wow, that's so funny that Inframan came like all the way around to being like high art to Roger Ebert. He was just like, is the best thing I've ever seen.
And I do this for a living.
That's what Inframan says as he's shoveling testosterone.
You can't take that many total T pills, Inframan. Your heart's gonna explode. And he's like, with justice.
I don't know. This all seems a little loose, buddy. I don't know if you know what's going on here.
Oh, man. I mean, that's it, right? That's the end of that part.
Yeah.
Okay, Frank, I think we've talked about both of these films in enough detail to give people an idea of what each one is. So let's move now into our final scores. And then after that, we will select our films for the other person to watch for the next episode. I will throw it over to you first, since you did the first half of the show. Final thoughts and a score out of 10 for Mechanical Violator Hakaider.
As always, this is difficult to score. This is always the hardest part of the show.
That's why we do it.
That's why we do it. Yeah. I enjoyed Hakaider. It was very simple in its execution, but as I mentioned in the review, it just evoked a lot of things that I was familiar with and appreciated, just like tonally, visually. So kind of falls into a weird place for me. I want to say like 5 out of 10 for Hakaider feels about right.
5 out of 10? Okay.
Yeah, because it was good. I really enjoyed it for what it was. It just didn't, I don't know. It didn't do enough to kick it up into a next gear for me where I was like obsessed with it, and to give it like a really high score, I would say.
Okay. That's lower than I thought, actually, but I can totally see why, because I'm sort of in a similar spot with Inframan. Like, you and I are not novices to the genre. We're not Roger Ebert, who's never seen a henshin man in his life, and it's just like, what does that mean? Like, we've seen
right, exactly. Yeah, totally. Because like, for me, it's like, I almost don't want to give it a bunch of extra points just because it's similar to other things I like, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, the rating is sort of, I will compare against other things, usually as a way to kind of knock points off of a film, because it's like, if this exists in similar format but better, it can sort of, in comparison, make the thing we're talking about look worse.
Right, which is not always fair, but it does, like you said, we've been exposed to a lot of this type of media, and this, I would watch it again for sure. Like, you might watch it. Like, it's just a great thing to throw on, Yeah. So it's cool. It's definitely cool. It's not a bad 5. It's a good 5.
It's a good 5. Hey, in case people don't know this, 5 is a commendable score. This is not your 5th grade math test where anything less than an 80%, they have to call your parents, okay? This is that's not a personal anecdote. Don't read into that. 5 out of 10 is good. That just means you made a movie, and it's a good, solid movie.
You did more than make a movie. If it's 5 out of 10, you made a movie that, like, yeah, it's serviceable. People are gonna like it. Like, that's a good score.
Just want to clarify that in case people think we're being harsh or not. Like, would you recommend Hakaider to someone who would be a fan of that genre? Because I assume you would.
Absolutely. But to compare this to the score I gave, like, The Shadow last week, which I believe I gave a 6 out of 10, that one got a little bit higher because for a good portion of that movie, it was like, I was like baffled and like confused and like, like excited because it was showing me things I felt like I'd never seen before in that configuration. And Hakaider didn't do enough of that. Not that that's always what you have to aim for, but like, just for my own kind of understanding, like, that's why that one scored a little higher compared to this.
Well, it made you feel something, which, that's harder to do almost if you're really familiar with a genre, to be surprised. And I think that, Hakaider's just like solid, but not groundbreaking, like relative to your experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
All right. 5 out of 10 for Hakaider. This is going to be a close one. Super Inframan coming in, I was kind of waffling between scores in that kind of middle range because much like Hakaider, I was like, it's not the best example of this type of film, It has some obvious flaws. There's like nothing to latch onto character-wise. The main character doesn't have an arc. There's not like the supporting elements that would take this cartoonish spectacle and kind of ground it just a bit and make it more engaging. But it's truly baffling. And I think especially in trying to recount it to you, I was like, honestly, this thing's going to be, not a month is going to go by that I'm not going to think about Super Inframan. Because it's so weird. So my score, and I'd written this down before you scored yours, I'm giving Super Inframan a 6 out of 10.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is exciting because...
That is exciting.
Frank, that means you've won the episode.
Wow, this is such an unfamiliar feeling. I don't...
First time all season, your recommendation, your blind pick, scored higher than mine. So that makes you the winner. How do you feel?
This is my post-game interview?
It is your post-game interview. So you played the sport today and you won the sport because you did better. But like, how did you do better?
Well, see, we had more points than the points that they
points
had.
That we had. Okay.
Yeah.
And so are you going to Disneyland or what? How do we do these?
Yeah. Next week we got to do that again. We got to get more points than they get.
We got to do about that. We're not focused on playoffs. All right, we're just
playoffs.
No,
nobody's gonna get that reference.
Nobody's gonna get that unless you're watching Sunday Night Football in like 2008 and just like tuning into the commercials. Anyway, Frank, you're the winner of episode 3 of this season of Meet Your Double Feature. Congrats on that first win of the season. What that means is that you get to make the next pick or the first pick for our next episode. So what would you like me to watch for next time?
You are going to want to watch 1992's, sticking to the 90s, Dr. Mordrid.
Dr. what?
Dr. Mordrid, Mordrid.
Okay. This has not come up in my research so far. Anything you want to preface about Dr. Mordrid?
Yes. This, to my understanding, started production as a Doctor Strange movie. And partway through, I think they didn't have the rights or didn't get the rights to Doctor Strange. So they just changed some names around and made the movie anyway.
Nice.
And that's why it's Dr. Mordrid.
That is the superhero tradition right there. Copyright infringement issues.
But the two leads of the movie stand out to me because the main protagonist of the film is played by Jeffrey Combs, who you may know that name because he is Wei Yun on Deep Space Nine. And
hold on. Which Deep Space Nine character is this?
He's he might not even be a primary character at the point of the show that you're at, actually.
Yeah, I'm midway through my Deep Space Nine watch. Is he there by season 4?
I feel like he's probably made an appearance by season 4. He becomes more of a central character as the show goes on because he's part of the Dominion.
Oh, okay. I swear, one of these days, if we ever start like supplementary content, it's just gonna be us talking about Deep Space Nine for 6 hours a day.
It's already what we do on this show. So.
Okay, so there's a Deep Space Nine alum starring in Dr. Mordrid. I say no more. Say less. I'm in.
Okay, I was gonna say more, but you go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Who's the other actor? Sorry, you said there was a second one.
I did say there was 2.
But you cut me off.
The other actor, who's the antagonist of the film, is played by Brian Thompson, who, while himself has appeared in several 90s Star Trek episodes as a Klingon, you and I would know him more as Shao Kahn from Mortal Kombat.
Oh, okay. I was starting to... He's also in Lionheart, the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie.
Yes, exactly.
Nice. I'm completely sold on the cast for that one. I don't know how that... I can't wait to see Temu Doctor Strange.
That's exactly what it is.
Just so funny, because nobody would have known that character at the time anyway. Like, he was not popular in media outside of comics. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't even know what you were getting. Like, I feel like audiences wouldn't know, like, oh, this was clearly supposed to be a this, because unless it was, like, Spider-Man, you would know them anyway.
I think there was a 1978 Doctor Strange movie. But again, that's not something that would have been part of mainstream culture. Yeah, so people wouldn't even know what they're getting the bootleg version of. You're right.
Yeah, it'd be like if we released a film and we were like, originally this was going to star Personator, but we had to rewrite it to be like the same. But who? Star who?
I'm sorry, the what? What'd you call me?
Personator. He's going to steal all the tea so that Inframan has no power.
And he explodes? We don't know.
We don't know. Nuclear energy. So, okay. Dr. Mordred, 1992. We're a 90s podcast. We can't escape it. I'm in. I have a controversial pick, I think. Because
controversial.
We might need to pull up our rules graphic again. Because the premise of the season is...
Okay, boss. You're the one.
I'm the one making the graphics. All right. The premise of our season is forgotten superhero movies. And I don't know if it's possible to say that a movie has been forgotten if it released a year and a half ago.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. But I feel like I really don't think you're gonna disagree with me when I say that your forgotten superhero film for next time is 2024's Kraven the Hunter.
Oh my gosh. Kraven the Hunter.
Because people will know that Sony, who owns the rights to like the Spider-Man catalog, but not Spider-Man himself, keeps releasing movies about Spider-Man villains as standalone films. And a couple of them, they're all terrible, but a couple of them have been like memed into being notable. We've been talking off air all day about Morbius, which was so bad, but then turned into a meme and convinced Sony to re-release it because they thought people would go for the lulz, and then it just bombed again. Even Madam Web got a bunch of flack for its like terrible trailer and for being like kind of a bait and switch movie that didn't have any superheroes in it. But have you heard anything about Kraven the Hunter?
Dude, honestly, like that movie's so like nebulous to me. Like I remember hearing about it a little bit before it came out and like maybe even watching a trailer for it. But hearing you say that movie came out in 2024, like you could have told me that movie has not yet come out and I would have like believed you.
See, that's why I knew you would not disagree. Maybe people in the comments, and if you're mad in the comments, let us know. It boosts our engagement. I think this counts. It's a forgotten film. It got forgotten in record time, but nobody's talking about it, not even as a joke. And so that's why I need you to watch it, because there's got to be a reason for that.
Wow. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that's right. We're not a 90s podcast. We're a 2024's podcast.
2024's. Yeah, that's okay. No, that's in the rules. All right, we got the rules up here. That counts.
Yep,
that counts.
Rule number 4: Kraven the Hunter is allowed.
Yeah, specifically, it's weird. We wrote that in back in 2024, but
yeah. Okay, great. I feel like that'll be fun. We have not covered a movie outside of our bonus episode where we talked about the new Tron film. We have not covered a movie for our main programming that released this century. So I think that this will be fun. We can talk about stuff like digital cameras, color grading.
Yeah, we'll get into it. We'll get into all that.
Get into it. So stay tuned for that. For now, that'll bring us to the end of this episode. Frank, do you want to just roll right into social media plug real quick and then we can just bow out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes I do this as a separate segment, but just really quickly. First of all, thank you for listening to our show. If you liked it, please consider liking the video, sharing it with a friend, telling somebody you know about our podcast. It is very helpful for expanding our reach. Very much appreciate that support. If you'd like to follow us on social media, we are available in a few different places. We're on Instagram at Meet Your Double Feature. We are on Blue Sky at MYDFpod. And we're also now on Letterboxd. You can find written review summaries of the films we cover on the show by going to Letterboxd and searching again for MYDF_pod. Basically, just search Meet Your Double Feature. You'll find all of our links. Or you can go to our website, meetyourdoublefeature.com, which will sort of serve as a link hub to reach any of those other places. Again, thank you so much for listening. Frank's going to close us out today by finishing that explanation about who that Deep Space Nine character was.
It's Morbin time.
Okay, see you later.
Coming up next, it's Dr. Mordred, followed by Craven the Hunter on Meet Your Double Feature.